Future-Proof is sponsored by Equipping Young Adults for Life, inspiring student resilience, championing hope.
Hello and thank you for joining me, Sarah Hopwood, as I continue these programmes looking at future-proofing and how we can inspire students and new people heading out there into the business world. Maybe through lockdown, maybe job changes have come your way, and rethinking about who you are and what it is that you're going to be doing. The main focus is about inspiring hope, and I've been covering some negative mindsets that haven't always served us as well as they might. And I've been working down the list here, and today I've got to the sentence here, a negative mindset that doesn't serve us, saying somebody do it for me. And it makes me think of two things. Number one, Richard Rohr, who talks about falling upward, a fantastic book which is so inspiring. And I hope that if you're feeling unsure and maybe nervous at this time and looking for some inspiration, then do search him. And the other thing is the cliche that life is a journey, it's not a destination. And the trouble with this negative mindset is that if we always want somebody else to do it for us, then what we are effectively doing is robbing ourselves of the journey that could be so fulfilling for us, tripping and falling as we go. We often learn more and often even elevate more through mistakes and failures than we do through our successes. The successes possibly plateau, and it's great to feel a sense of reward of what has been done and what has been achieved, and also to make sure that we're not blind to what has been done and what has been achieved. So whilst we may not have fulfilled our ultimate goal, we could well have actually made very, very good headway on that journey and just not recognised and, if you like, had a heart of gratitude for the small steps that have been successful. And in the past, I've talked about slices of salami that can really, really help us break down big tasks into smaller tasks where you can. It's a bit like having your to-do list where you can tick things off and acknowledge and recognise that something has been done and achieved, and that can give us a sense of fulfilment. But the trouble with asking someone else to do it for us all the time, number one, it can lead us, if we're not careful, into a heart of laziness, and as soon as we go into that arena, then our motivation can be dumbed down, so we end up doing less than we were ever going to do beforehand. There's a great saying of it's better to have a huge dream and achieve part of it than to have a smaller dream and achieve all of it. So it's about trying to aim high and to be ambitious and to be expectant as well, because we often determine what we get back, if you know what I mean, by our thought patterns. But also at this tender time, and it is a tender time when many, many people are hurting and they're feeling perhaps a bit bruised and vulnerable, then I would also advocate make sure that your thoughts and dreams are sometimes, it depends on your character. You know yourself better than anybody else, and if you're not sure, then maybe ask someone who loves you. But it could well be a case that you don't go exponential in your dreams, that you do something that you do see as realistic and achievable, which are words that I have argued against before, but I actually think they come into play now, and I'll say more about that in just a minute. But in order to have a frame of mind, I think, that helps us take the tasks that we're supposed to do and not try and delegate them to somebody else. And delegation is not abdication. So if you do delegate or ask for help, don't abdicate at the same time. Don't remove yourself completely. Stay on that playing field whilst you gain the support that you want. The last time I was running through the 8 Pillars of Joy, and this was Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama who got together and wrote this great book. I can't remember what it's called now. It's something about the pursuit of joy or something like that. Do Google it and you'll find it. And they talked about the 8 pillars, which were perspective, humility, humour, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion and generosity. And they were saying that if we exercise these, then it will help us feel more joyful, whatever we are actually dealing with at the time. The key one for me at this time is perspective, because if we keep thinking the way that we've always thought about problems that we've perhaps seen before, or even have a thought pattern that we're used to and bring that thought pattern to a new problem, then we will struggle to change our perspective on it. We will keep seeing things as they always were. So if we want to try and determine different results, we need to often change our perspective on the problem. And it could be, if you were physically doing it, you would literally walk around the table and go over there and look at it from another point of view. But another very good way of changing your perspective about something is maybe to ask other people what they think. Maybe, and I've said this before about asking maybe a child what they think. Give the problem to them in the simplest form, or the situation, and ask them what they think. And these things can help us see things from a different perspective. Before now, it's even been said, why don't you put your watch on the other wrist? Maybe go up and down the staircase in a different way to what you normally do. And these little behaviour patterns can help us think and see things differently. And when we see and think differently, we can then bring about different results. So when we are not abdicating, when we are not asking other people to do the job instead of us, when we are taking responsibility and saying, no, this is my monkey, this is a job for me to do, I'm not supposed to abdicate or pass it on to somebody else, then, and I've just touched on it now about goals being realistic and what have you. If you've heard about these, they're called the SMART goals. And what I love is actually, it's an acronym, and what I love is actually the ER on the bottom, SMARTER goals. And so the S stands for be specific about what it is that you want to set about and do. The next one is measured, and make sure that's kind of in time frames, how much, by when, and things like that. And the next one, often people will say, is it achievable? And I would argue that this is possibly relevant at this time, particularly if you're struggling, then you might need to know the answer to that. But when I'm thinking big, I don't have A as achievable. I have A as, is it agreed? Are we agreed to do this? And I'll often run the story of them planning to get to the moon all those years ago. If they all asked themselves if it was achievable, half of them probably would have packed up and gone home. But when they all sat there as scientists and as a team that wanted to get to the moon and said, are we all agreed? Then they would have all still been smiling, full of energy, still quite not knowing how they were going to do it. And the next one is it realistic, is what the R is well known for. And again, I've argued that before and said, if we keep saying, is it realistic? So going back to the moon, had they said, is it realistic? They still might have put in some negative mindset answers to that. But if we actually say, is it relevant, i.e. is it relevant to who we are, what we want to do, what we want to achieve? If you're sat round in a boardroom saying, are we agreed? And is it relevant to what we stand for on the core values of the business? You're all still smiling, which is really important towards a positive mindset. And then you have, is time bound, and this for me, I think it's definitely putting in benchmarks. halfway through the plan or what have you, double check that you're on course, double check that things are as they're supposed to be. Don't just set off and not evaluate. So put in some a time frame and then put in some checkpoints to make sure that you are on target and that everything is running as you think. Because if it isn't, then money immediately gets involved, because time is money, and you could actually be putting yourselves into debt for one reason or another. The ERs are incredibly important. So many people know the SMART goals. E is to evaluate. And this is, once you've achieved something, make sure you evaluate. Otherwise, you just set another goal and you go again, and you actually rob yourself of the celebration. And when you have evaluated, and when you're giving yourselves a thumb up or a pat on the back, then you have a reward. And what is that reward? And it can be something very, very simple, like going down the pub for a beer, maybe getting your nails done, maybe buying a new tie. I don't know what it is. But also it could be a reward on a completely different level. It could be a holiday. It could be, I don't know, buying something with your earnings. It could just be a picnic in the park. So I commend to you, do the job if your name is on it. Don't delegate to somebody else, or worse than that, never, never abdicate. I'll see you in just a moment as I continue talking about doing the job that you're supposed to do.